So, in all honesty, I didn't even know if I wanted to make a video about this, but I guess because of yesterday's events, because of yesterday's game, and because of the momentum that the Edmonton Oilers have been bestowing upon themselves, now is as good a time as any to revisit some comments made from a few days ago by one TSN insider, Craig Button, who went out there and spoke out about the Oilers on a recent edition of what was this show? Jay on Sports Center. That's what it is. Yes, Sports Center with Jay on Rate. That's exactly what it is. But instead of diving directly into the comments that were presented, I wanted to go over some of the context as to why we are bringing this up now. So initially, this video clip was from November 18th, 2024, so a few days ago, where Craig Button went out there and spoke out about Edmonton. The date of this video clip was on the same day the Oilers dropped a 3-0 shutout loss to the Montreal Canadiens, and it was a pretty big deal, I would say. The fact that the Habs were able to get on track and get this big shutout victory. Sammy Montembeault went out there with a heck of a lot of saves in this one, 30 for 30, as the big man got the shutout. And those comments made by Button were at the end of the Oilers game against the Habs. The Oilers then followed up this defeat at the hands of Montreal with a big win against the Ottawa Senators on Tuesday. 5-2 victory. They got themselves back up on the board. I will say that some of the guys that were producing points in this one were pretty noteworthy to me. In particular, the newest line mate to one Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, it's Vasily Podkolzin, believe it or not, who went out there and scored 2 assists alongside of Draisaitl and McDavid's 3-point nights. They each had 3 points. Evan Bouchard also scored a beautiful goal. That game happened on the same day that we made this video talking about how Evan Bouchard is all washed and not good. But eventually, we saw ourselves yet another Edmonton game happen yesterday against the Minnesota Wild in a game that a lot of people were freaked out by because you had Kirill Kaprizov exiting the game. There was a bit of an injury scare in that one, but fortunately for everybody involved, or maybe unfortunately for the Oilers, Kaprizov did return to the game. So good on him, good on me, because I have him in a few of my fantasy teams this year, and ultimately Kaprizov was able to make an impact as the Minnesota Wild won 5-3. Yeah, pretty big loss at the hands of the Oilers here, and ultimately, even though you had the weirdest goal of all time scored by Leon Draisaitl to open up the point production, even though Marc-Andre Fleury made a done goof and let in a Draisaitl long shot from his own zone, the Oilers still ended up losing. And there are some terrible stats that we are seeing from this game, like the fact that Stuart Skinner let in 5 goals on 26 shots against. He had an 808 save percentage, and now if you're taking a look at some of the other numbers, I mean, Stuart Skinner has been so bad that now you're seeing numbers like this pop up on social media and Edmonton Oilers coverage. Take a look at this posted by StatCenter. Here are the lowest save percentages in an Oilers goalie's first 14 games in the last 30 seasons, from 1994 to 1995 to the present. What I think this means is that save percentages for an Oilers goalie in the first 14 games of a season in the last 30 seasons, Stuart Skinner had one of the worst seasons last year with an .875 save percentage, and this year he is only slightly better at an .876 save percentage. Lo and behold, you've got Jack Campbell with an .875 as well from 22-23, followed up by Devin Dubnyk, Tommy Salo, and Fred Brathwaite. Really not a good list that you want to be on. You don't ever want to see your name attached to some of the lowest save percentage numbers in a team's history. Stuart Skinner just happens to be there twice. And so with yesterday's game, I wanted to illuminate some comments made by Craig Button back on that Jay on Rate show. And of course, you can see in the video clip, at this moment in time, for me, the Oilers are not a serious Stanley Cup contender. No way. I'll also leave a link in the description to an article published on HockeyLatest.com where the writer, Daniel Lusant, goes out there and transcribes some of the extra comments made by Button, so it's a little bit easier for us to follow along. Take a look at this. A lot of the Oilers' problems have to do with offense, but it goes deeper than that. Defensive lapses and inconsistent goaltending have put this team in a hole, and Craig Button didn't mince words the morning after the loss to the Habs, stating that the Oilers lack depth and aren't talented enough across their lineup to consistently compete at an NHL level. The reason their expected goals are so high and their actual goals are so low is because they don't have enough talent, Button said. They rely on Connor McDavid and Draisaitl to carry a significant part of it, and they do, but after that, they have real struggles. On the blue line, when they make a mistake, it becomes something that goes in their net, and the goaltending hasn't been very good. While Button stopped short of ruling out their chances at a Stanley Cup run, he highlighted that something needs to be done from the front office. Now, you look at a team that went to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final last year, had so much going for themselves. They are a weaker team. They're a lesser team. Now it's incumbent. It's all on management here to go and make significant moves to improve this team. We know the top end is outstanding, but after that, real problems. Then the Oilers went out there and made some additions. They claimed Kasperi Kapanen off of waivers, and they're hoping for more output out of guys like Nugent Hopkins and Zach Hyman. But ultimately, Craig Button has a point here. The Oilers have been underperforming outside of those top two guys. And you can say that even expectations aren't really being met necessarily, because even though Connor McDavid has gone out there with a pretty reasonably high point production rate this season, he isn't on pace for the same 130, 150 point capacity like he has been on in the past. He is only on pace for 110 points this season, which, of course, is amazing, but would be the worst season he had had in 4 years if he only maxes out at 110. So, when the top guys are not really playing at their peaks, and the rest of the lineup is not really up to snuff either, you have a recipe like this where the Edmonton Oilers are, sure, they're still one of the top dogs in the Pacific Division, but they don't have a huge stranglehold like everybody expected them to. A lot of people thought the Oilers would have been unanimously number one. They would have overtaken everybody. They were able to beat out the West in last year's Stanley Cup playoffs and find themselves within a goal of the Stanley Cup. And that was great. There was a lot of progression and a lot of growth out of this team. But to see everybody regress back, Stuart Skinner is no longer that playoff beast. He is kind of taken that Cinderella shoe off and he's back to regular old Stuart Skinner. You kind of have to wonder how far this is going to go. Now, I know the Oilers were in a terrible spot last year around this time as well. We recognize the Cinderella story from Jay Woodcroft to Chris Knobloch and all the tribulations that they worked through to get past that. But at the end of the day, you can't just cut and paste the same script from last year and expect it to happen again, right? Or maybe you can, and we are a little bit jebaited here. Maybe we are just being taken for a ride, and the Oilers are going to bounce back, and they are going to become good again, and we just gotta wait and see, because Connor McDavid is gonna turn the Jets on, and he's gonna have a double point per game month, and then Draisaitl's gonna have a 50 goal caliber pace month, and then he's gonna continue doing that, and he's gonna get 55 goals. Maybe that happens. Maybe the Oilers just explode. Maybe Podkolzin is the winger that Draisaitl and McDavid needed after all. But then again, where are you going when you're putting Draisaitl and McDavid on the same line? I don't know, man. There are a lot of things to go out there and think about with the Oilers, but I wanted to use Craig Button's comments to get that conversation going on this video, so I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about Edmonton after their loss to the Montreal Canadiens the other day, after their loss to the Minnesota Wild yesterday? What are your thoughts on Stuart Skinner providing some more terrible goaltending, and where do you think this leads the Oilers heading into the rest of the season and the playoffs? Does Craig Button have a point? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.